I was supposed to give a cue. So we're going to be recording this. And the reason that we record this, or Michael's records it, is that you can go ahead and watch this Zoom after the fact on Michael's community classroom page. And so you can watch on demand. So if you're not able to paint along with us, or you need to go back, or you want to do it again, you can always go ahead and watch this Let's Paint Live or any of their other great community classroom videos. They have an amazing library that they've put together. So again, Andy's going to paint. I'm going to be here. If you guys have questions, put them in the chat and I'll try to answer them, or we'll throw them over to Andy. Andy is our, not even part of, he is our Let's Paint program that we have here with Plaid. And so, you know, just an amazing program teaching everybody how to paint. If you haven't already joined our Facebook group, so it is Let's Paint with Plaid. So you definitely want to check that. Andy is live in that group multiple times a week. Chris Williams, Donna Dewberry, Jesse Jennings, everybody is always on there. So you definitely want to check that out and become a member. Also, don't forget to hashtag your painting after with hashtag Plaid Crafts, and also hashtag Make It with Michaels. So we can, and Michaels can see everything that you guys are making. So thank you, Michaels, for having us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to quit yapping and let Andy get started. So
thank you, Kira. All right, so thank you, Kira, and thank you, Michaels, for having me here in the community classroom again. And welcome, everyone. I hope that you are all ready to paint along. What I would like to say is, if at some point you're painting along and you think things are getting a little bit out of control for you, it is perfectly fine for you to stop painting. You can take notes, or you can wait for the video to be posted and you can pick up and continue on with your painting. But please don't be really frustrated and feel like you're just trying to race through the painting, because that wouldn't be good for anyone. And I want you to have a beautiful painting when you're done. You could use this painting. It's painted on an 8x8, and I did it on a gallery wrap canvas so that you can see the edge of the canvas is all painted. And this doesn't need a frame to hang on the wall, but you could also use it if you have a bookcase or something. You could tuck it in a bookcase, or maybe sit it on an end table, you know, with a holiday arrangement around it. So it's a nice, small, sort of intimate painting. And I want you to have a beautiful painting when you're finished. So if you need to slow down and paint at your own pace, that's not what's going on here. That's perfectly fine and a very smart thing to do. So we are going to paint the background of our poinsettia painting. We're going to dry it. We're going to transfer our design, and then we're going to paint our poinsettia on top of that. So that's just a rough kind of roadmap of where we're going to be going. So I will tell you all of the paint names that I'm using and give you kind of a generic description of the paint so that you can use whatever paint you have on hand. So I'm going to be using the FolkArt Pure Artist Pigment paints. And these are paints that are a new product at Michaels this year. They are extremely thick paint, and they are thick by design because you want to be able to get a full range of effects from these paints. So I can trowel on this paint with a palette knife for very thick textured effects, or I can use them thinned down with water or a medium to a transparent look and get very, very fine kind of watercolor washes with these paints. So anything I want to do, I can do with the FolkArt Pure Artist Pigment paints. And so I am putting out, we're going to start out with 4 colors for our background. And the colors are Viridian, which is a really deep, dark kind of bottle fly green color. You could use any really, really dark green color that has a blue cast to it. I have a color here called Payne's Gray, and it may look black to you, but Payne's Gray, when you thin it out, is really a beautiful blue gray color. It is a transparent color, and it's some color that I use quite a bit of in place of black when I can. And it just gives you another a very interesting color to work with. Then I have medium yellow and yellow light. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to create a different shade of yellow. So I'm going to mix some medium yellow and yellow light together just to create a color that's kind of in between those two colors. I don't want it too light and I don't want it too golden. And then once I have this color, I'm going to just change it into a vibrant kind of lime green color by adding just a little bit of Viridian to this. And you can see that we now have a really nice kind of Kermit the Frog green color. All right, and if you are sitting at your painting table and you have hundreds of bottles of FolkArt paint at your disposal and you see a bright green color that you like, you can certainly pull that bottle down and use that color green. But the most of the background is going to be Viridian and Payne's gray used together. And I'm using a synthetic bristle brush that has a fairly firm bristle to it. And I like these a little bit more than the really soft Taklon brushes for painting on canvas. And I want to share with you a little tip. I am working tonight on a canvas panel, and I have made some loops of tape, and I've hooked it onto just a piece of cardboard so that as I'm painting, if a paint gets off the edge, it'll get on the cardboard and not all over my hands. So I like to be a neat painter, and this just keeps it keeps the paint off my hands and gives you a little bit better handle if you're working on a canvas panel. If you are working on a gallery wrap canvas, then you'll paint and then you will turn up and you'll paint the outside edges of your canvas so that it matches the background. All right, so hopefully I've given you enough time to get your paint out and get a green color mix. We won't be using this right away, so you'll have time to mix that as we go along. I like to hold the brush a little bit differently than many of you do. Many of you hold the paintbrush where the ferrule meets the handle, and you hold the paintbrush like a pencil and you paint like this. And that's perfectly fine if you're doing a tightly rendered, very precise painting. I want you to hold the paintbrush a little differently. I want you to put the handle of the paintbrush where your pinky meets your palm and then grip it like this. So when I paint, I'm painting like this. I'm holding the brush as far back on the handle as I can, and then I am able to paint in a much more casual manner. All right, so here we go. I'm going to pick up some Viridian on my brush, and don't be shy with the paint right now. And I'm going to brush mix in some Payne's gray, making a very, very dark green that looks almost black. It's not, but it looks that way on camera. And I'm just going to start painting in my background. And this paint is thick, but I've got enough paint on my brush that it brushes out beautifully. So just keep picking up some more of this color. And because I'm mixing it with my brush and I didn't make a pile of it, each time I pick up the paint, I will have a variation in the shade of my background. So I'm putting quite a bit of paint on because I want to really cover this background. So Payne's gray and Viridian picked up together, and I'm brushing this on, and you want to use strokes that are maybe, I don't know, maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches long. And we will be changing the direction of our brush. So some will go this way and some will go that way. And we're just going to work across the canvas, brushing this paint out, making sure to have nice coverage on the canvas. If there are a few areas where the paint is a little bit more transparent than others, that's perfectly fine, but we just really want to work the two colors together in our brush, and then we're applying them to the canvas using strokes that go one direction and then the other. So this isn't hard, but this is not the focal point of our painting. So we don't want to spend forever just painting in this background. We want it to be attractive, but we don't want to make a career out of painting the background. I'm just going back to make sure I've got it nicely covered. And the FolkArt Pure Artist pigments will probably stay wetter a little bit longer than the acrylics that you may be used to working with. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wipe my brush off. And I want you to see how I do this. I put my brush down on my paper towels, and I prefer these blue shop towels. And then I fold my paper towel over and pull the brush through. So that takes the paint off of my brush and it grooms the brush back to a nice flat surface. All right, so now I'm going to pick up a little bit of my Kermit the Frog green that I made. And I don't need much of that on my brush. And I'm just going to pick a couple of areas and I'm just going to brush some of this color on and soften it into the wet paint. Wipe my brush off, pick up a little more green of this light green color, and then pick another spot and just kind of brush this in, just creating a couple of lighter areas in the background. And then wipe the brush off, and I'll come back up here and I'll brighten this area a little bit more. And just kind of soften that color out a little bit. It doesn't have to be finely blended, but we just don't want green headlights there. So just kind of soften that color in a little bit. Okay, and that is our background. So I'm going to let you work on your background a little bit, and I'm going to take my heat gun and I'm going to begin to dry this background. Yes, we did use the lime green here in a couple of areas and then blended that in. And I'm just going to take my heat gun and I'm going to begin to dry this background. So you all keep, I'm sorry, let me turn that off. You all keep working on the background while I'm drying this. And I want to call your attention to the fact that the FolkArt Pure Artist pigments will dry to a completely matte, flat finish. There will be no sheen to them at all. And then as I'm going to be drying this from my right-hand side over to the left-hand side, and you'll notice that the color is going to change dramatically. Okay, if you could see here where this is still wet, the Viridian looks much, much darker, and it looks much lighter over here where it's already dry. So I'm just going to continue to dry while you all continue to paint your background.
Yep. So, Andy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. So people were just asking if you can watch this online. So everybody, you can watch this on the Michaels Community Classroom page. It's usually up in about 24 hours. So by tomorrow, they'd like to get the classes up, but you can absolutely go ahead and watch this on demand. So, which is really great. So if you're just watching right now to be inspired and learning more about the paint and what Andy's doing, you can always go back and watch this again when you have time. And then Andy's using a heat,
I'm using a big old heat gun instead of a
I
hair
was like
dryer.
a heat tool. I couldn't think of the word, but you could use a hair dryer.
Yeah, it just takes longer with a hair dryer. Now,
Yep.
if I can, I've been noticing a lot of comments that people are saying the paint is too thick. The paint is not too thick. The paint is just thicker than what you're used to. You might need to use a little bit more paint and a little bit more pressure on your brush to spread it out, but the paint's just fine. It is supposed to be very thick. It's just maybe has a new, you haven't been used to using a paint that's that heavy bodied. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but use plenty of paint and just apply it a little bit more thickly to your canvas and you'll be just fine. So I'm going to keep drying this because I see some shiny spots.
Yep, absolutely. And you could use any of your folk art paints that you have. This Pure is just a new paint that we came out with last year, and Michael's is carrying it, and it's part of Andy's color lessons this year. So definitely a big fan. And again, it's just a different type of paint. And then you could use either one tonight.
Yeah, the FolkArt Pure Artist Pigment just really allows you to do a lot more with your paint than you can do with regular or multi-surface FolkArt acrylics. I love this paint, and it does take a little bit of getting used to, so I understand that. So I'm going to give you another couple of minutes to keep working on your background because I don't want to, I want you to feel the need for speed, but I don't want you to feel completely rushed. So let's just move along. And in these classes, just honestly, an hour bothers me so much. I would like for you all to have tons of time to do all of this stuff, but we do try to keep it close to an hour. And it's more important that you learn and understand the technique rather than it is to finish your whole painting. So somebody just said that they loved the Top Gun reference. So if we're going with our Top Gun reference, I believe we're headed into the danger zone. So we've got just a little tiny bit more to do to the background. So if everyone can stop painting at home and watch me for just a moment, I'm going to pick up a little bit of the Kermit the Frog green on my brush, and I don't have very much on my brush at all. And what I want to do is to lay my brush down parallel to the surface of the canvas and just kind of pull a little bit of color on. So let me bring this up for a close-up. So zooming in, you can see that very little paint has just kind of skimmed across the weave of the canvas and collected just at the top of the weave of the canvas. So I'm going to do that in just a couple of places, just to add a little bit of variation to the background. So that's what we've got going on. Not a lot to that, but I am going to dry this in place. So if you go to put this on, you really don't need much paint on your brush because you just want the paint to cling to the top of the canvas weave. All right, and that is hot. I love my big industrial strength heat gun, but it does get the surface very, very hot. So don't burn yourself or don't scorch your paint or cause it to blister up or catch on fire if you're using a heat gun. I always overbuy tools. You know, if I'm gonna, buy a tool, I'm gonna buy a big one. And so I got a big heat gun, and it's more than you need, but I love it. Does the job and then some. All right, so I'll give you another 3 or 4 minutes to get your background done. And then we will be moving on to our transferring of our design. So I'll talk you through that, and we can transfer our design and then start painting our poinsettia. And the poinsettia is not difficult to paint. I think you all will enjoy my technique that I'm going to show you tonight on how to do that. Okay, I'm not sure. There was a question that I didn't see, Kira. Maybe you can help me. She was asking why I painted the background this way instead of something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I've been private messaging people too, Andy, on some of these, so.
Okay, I don't know.
But you are welcome to answer why you painted the way you painted.
Okay, I just did this while trying to do something as a quick way to get a background done. I probably would have painted around my poinsettia design, but then I'm going to let some of this dark green show through my petals to give me a little bit of additional color. So I just did a nice background that has some variation to it. And then I'm gonna put the flower on top of it. So it's just a matter of preference on how I did that for this Michael's Community Classroom project. So very happy to answer any painting questions that you have.
Yep. There is a question about it's so thick and they're not able to get it to spread. Candalee said it's just so thick and she's using like half a bottle, or she's used more than half a bottle to get the background.
Okay, it's probably a combination of the amount of paint she's using and the brush that she's using. If your brush is very soft, it's not going to spread the paint as easily. A little stiffer bristle brush would go a long way toward helping you move that out. But the paint will move just fine on the canvas. You pick it up and you just brush it out. If you need to put a firm pressure on, then do that, and that might help you a little bit more as well. But I don't usually thin down my paints with water. Occasionally I'll use the FolkArt floating medium, but I didn't want to do that for this background. I just wanted to put the paint on and then let it dry. And about cleaning my brush, I just have it's still sitting here. I haven't put it in water. It probably will just stay out until I'm done with the painting before I actually clean it. I don't clean my brushes very often in water. I just lay them down and they work just fine. I think people have some preconceived notion that when you're painting with acrylic paint that you need to constantly dip your brush in water for some reason, and you just don't have to do that. I don't wet my brushes before I pick up paint with them. The orange color on my palette is medium yellow, and this color next to it is yellow light. So I kind of mix the two of those together in a little Viridian to come up with my Kermit the Frog color green. All right, so let's talk about transferring your design. And I know some of you are used to doing this and some of you don't like to do it. I provide you with a template to make your painting easier for you. Many times, people just think they're just gonna sketch something on or just kind of wing it. And that's well and good sometimes. And then other times you're winging it, it just doesn't, you don't quite wing everything in the right spot, and your proportions may be a little bit off, and it just makes your whole painting look a little whacked out. So that's why I provide you with a template. And so this has been put on tracing paper, and I'm laying it down on my dry background. Your background is now completely dry before you transfer your design on. So I've lined that up. I've secured it with a little piece of tape so it's not slipping around. And then I have artist transfer paper. And there is what I call a good side and a bad side to the transfer paper. And even though this particular transfer paper says this side up, I always check it. So I would put my transfer paper down and just with my fingernail, just make a little mark. and make sure that my transfer paper is transferring to my surface. Then you take your transfer paper, slip it under your design, and then using a ballpoint pen or a stylus, you simply retrace your template, and then you get your design on your canvas in the right spot, and everything is just as it should be. This isn't cheating or making you less of an artist because you're using a template. It makes you smarter because you're letting somebody else do all of this work for you, and you just reap the benefits of having a design that is in proportion and properly placed on the canvas for you. So you just go over the lines, and you might want to check a couple of times just to make sure that everything is transferring. And I'll bring that up for a close-up. So you can see that the lines are transferring and everything is going on there just as it should. And then through the magic of being prepared ahead of time, we have a canvas that has the dry background on it. And yes, the transfer paper is reusable over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Use it until you can't get a line off of it. But a good piece of transfer paper can last you for several years if you don't misplace it. All right, so here is my background that is dry and my design has been transferred to it. Okay, so I will give you a couple of minutes to get that done, and then we'll be ready to move on to painting our poinsettia on our canvas. I'm not sure what step they're wanting to skip. Transferring your design. That's not a real good idea to skip that step because you're going to need to have some design on your canvas. If you don't want to transfer your design, then you can sketch it on there with a piece of chalk or even just a pencil. So give you just a little bit more time to get that done.
Yep, so you can absolutely freehand it, or you can use, a pencil, old school graphite on the back and trace it. Or again, if you need to, you can always paint again with Andy later and watch it on the community classroom.
Okay, I want to make sure that they understand something, Kira. When you said old school graphite, make sure that you are not confusing that with like typewriter carbon paper.
Right. This is where you just take a number 2 pencil like we've done before.
That's perfectly fine to do that. But don't ever, ever, ever use typewriter carbon paper. You will have a huge mess on your hands that you will wish you had never done. Okay, so somebody wanted to see the finished painting. So there it is. And the finished painting and this painting are the same paints, same color. The one I'm working on needs to be varnished, and when you varnish, it will bring back the original color. Okay, so giving you just another minute before we start on our leaves. I was going to say before we start on our flower. This is an 8x8 canvas, and these red areas on our painting are actually leaves and not flowers. The poinsettia flower is pretty insignificant, and it's just these yellow bits right here in the center, but all of the red parts of the poinsettia plant are actually just red leaves.
I did not know that.
Yes. the whole, look at your white poinsettia behind you.
Oh, my lovely fake white poinsettia, Andy, it was giving me a hard time. Okay.
It's got green leaves and it's got white leaves, and then it's got the little blooms in there. Yes.
I did not know that.
But the flower is just the little tiny bits in the center. The other parts are leaves. And in tropical climates, poinsettias can grow like hedges, and they're just gigantic shrubs that live outdoors all year long. So we only get to enjoy them for a little while during the holiday season. And I think they're very bad for cats. So, I mean, just don't ever let your cat eat your houseplants, whatever they are. I think that poinsettias are bad news for cats. So we
yes,
don't
that's
anything.
True. I remember that growing up.
Okay, yes. So don't eat your poinsettias. Okay, we're about halfway through our class, and we are now ready to start on our red poinsettia leaves. So what I have done on my palette is I have put out 3 additional colors of paint. I have put out red light, naphthol crimson, and alizarin crimson. And each one of these reds will give us very different effects with our flower. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, I'm using a number 12 flat brush, and this again is a firm bristle brush. So I'm going to pick up some of the naphthol crimson, and I'm just going to pick any poinsettia leaf to start with, and I'm just going to paint the poinsettia leaf with the naphthol crimson. Following my template. And I'm just putting a moderate amount of paint on the surface. And make sure that you can still pay attention to where that center vein is. Just brush, brush, brush this color on, and you'll be able to see through it a little bit, and that's going to be just fine. Turn your painting around so it's comfortable for you to work on it.
Maybe Andy, you can hold it up when you're done with that, like pull it up to the camera.
So they get a close up?
Yeah, that always seems to help.
We can certainly do that.
Someone said red, red, and red. There we go. Yep, perfect.
Okay, all right, so it's red. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe that naphthol crimson off on my shop towel. And I'm going to now pick up a little Payne's gray and a little alizarin crimson and just kind of mix those together on my brush. More alizarin crimson than Payne's gray. But just mixing a really, really nice dark burgundy color. And then I'm going to apply this dark shading next to my center vein line. And I'm just going to blend that out, softening that into the poinsettia leaf. And where the poinsettia leaf goes under the other one, I'm going to add some of this dark color. And just soften this out. The fun and exciting part is when we highlight this. So I'm just going to carry some of that dark color down toward the bottom of the leaf. Wipe my brush off, and we're going to move on to another leaf. And try to do these 3 right here for you. So starting in, filling in the leaf with the naphthol crimson. Again, apply the color using a firm pressure on the brush. That'll help you spread that paint out. Don't add any water to it. Just put the paint down and stretch it out. You all can do this. And I will tell you that painting along during these classes it's like playing beat the clock. You know, it's hard for most people to paint as quickly as I am, even if you know exactly what we're doing. And when you're trying to learn something and figure it out as you're going, it's even worse. So I understand that you all want me to slow down and, you know, do everything slow, but we have time constraints, so we can't do that. But because these classes are recorded and you will have the link to go back and watch this, you can paint at your own pace after this evening's session. So better to slow down and not drive yourself crazy. Take it a little bit slow and keep your frustration level down. All right, so once again, I'm going to wipe the Naphthol Crimson out of my brush, and I'm going to pick up my Alizarin Crimson and Payne's Gray, making that super dark burgundy color. You don't have Alizarin Crimson, you could use True Burgundy. If you don't have Payne's Gray, you could actually use a little bit of black. All right, so I'm going to apply this dark shading color on the dark side of that center vein.
Andy, can you talk a little bit more about your brush?
Yes,
like what size? Is it stiff? People are just having, you know, they just want some suggestions on the brush, I think.
Sure. This is a number 12 flat brush, and it is a firm bristle synthetic brush with using the FolkArt Pure Artist Pigments. The firm bristle brush really does allow me to move the paint a little easier than a soft traditional Taklon brush does. But if you apply the paint using a firm pressure, and by firm pressure, I'm telling you to really press the brush into the paint. And then like here where I want to create a gradation of color, use a lighter pressure on the brush to blend and soften that color out. So it's apply the paint with pressure, use a very light touch to blend the paint. Right, so I'm going to come back on this other leaf that I just did earlier, and I've just got too much background showing through, so I'm going to put on a little bit more Naphthol Crimson there and just kind of soften that in a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of give a little bit more red color to this particular leaf. Okay, I'm going to move on to this next leaf, and I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to take my Naphthol Crimson and I'm going to apply it to the leaf. I'm applying the paint with a nice firm pressure, moving that paint around. I will tell you all, the more you paint, the better you will get. There's no secret in becoming a good painter. It's just a matter of lots of practice and being willing to put in the time and effort to get good at it. And you can do it, and you just need to paint a lot. Painting once a month is not going to get you there. You got to paint quite a bit more than that. A regular painting time has got to become part of your regular routine. It's just the same as people who want to become good runners. You can't become a good runner if you only run once or twice a month. You have to run basically every day in order to build up your stamina and your technique. Kira is a long distance runner.
Yeah.
She started training for some marathons, and I know a couple of years ago you were running marathons fairly regularly.
Yep. The last one was the week before the world shut down last year.
Well, there you go. Well, at least you got it in.
I did. I was looking at the shirt the other day. I was like, oh, I ran this, and then the world shut down.
That's right. Well, painting is one of those things that we have fortunately been able to do while the world has been shut down. Okay, again, wipe my brush off. I'm going to pick up my Payne's Gray and my Alizarin Crimson, just mixing these colors together on my brush. And brush mixing allows you to always have a little variation in the color. So it's not the same color every time you apply it to your painting. All right, so I'm going to apply this dark shading where this leaf goes underneath the other one. And I'm applying it with a firm pressure. And then I'm going to apply the shading behind the center vein, or on the dark side of the center vein. And I'm going to apply the color with a firm pressure to really get that paint stuck on the canvas. And then I'm going to lighten up the pressure on the brush as I move and blend that color out into the poinsettia leaf. I'm going to pick up a little bit more dark and apply that at the bottom of the leaf. Apply that with a firm pressure, and then lighten the pressure on the brush as I blend and soften that color up into the poinsettia leaf. Okay, so I think you're getting the idea about how we're applying the dark color and blending that into the poinsettia leaf. We'll just continue. Beautiful. Well, thank you, Kira. We're just going to continue doing the same thing, and then we're going to really just dramatically change the entire painting when we start to apply our highlight color. All right, so a little naphthol crimson on my brush, and I'm applying that color to the poinsettia leaf using firm pressure. And I've painted a number of poinsettias, and each time I paint them, I try to paint them using some different techniques, just to keep things interesting for me, because after a while you don't want to always paint the same subject matter the same way. That's not very fun or interesting. So apply the color with firm pressure, then wipe the color off my brush, back to my shading color, which is Payne's Gray and Alizarin Crimson mixed together on my brush. And apply that where one leaf goes under another leaf. Apply it with firm pressure. I'm going to also apply it where it goes underneath the leaf here on this side. Apply firm pressure when you're putting this color on, and then much lighter pressure as you blend this color into the leaf. That's your big takeaway from this evening. Apply color using a firm pressure, and then blend using a very light pressure. Okay, we have 3 more leaves to go. So I know this is moving very fast for you all. Just trying to keep the pace going because we have to cover some ground. And as Kira mentioned, I am live on Facebook every Tuesday and Thursday with the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group. And we do a thing called Lunch and Learn. And we on Tuesdays, we do a deep dive into some sort of technique or subject matter. And then on Thursday, we generally do a project. And so we, Lunch and Learns usually run a little more than an hour. And then the videos can be watched on demand at your convenience, just like these classes can, so that you can take what you learned in the live stream and then watch it as many times as you need to in order to really get the technique and the principles really locked into memory, and to be able to do it at your own pace so that you're not trying to keep up with me, which is nobody's idea of a good time. And I'm usually not one who thinks painting fast is any kind of fun or a good time. I like to paint at generally a slow pace and enjoy my painting. So I'm once again wiped my brush off, picking up Payne's Gray and Alizarin Crimson. And I'm going to apply this on the dark side of my center vein.
So Andy is on at noon Eastern, right, Andy, on Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Yes, noon Eastern time.
And I put the link in the comments. I know there's a lot of questions, but noon Eastern, but if you go to the Facebook page, Let's Paint with Plaid, you can check that out there.
Yes.
And again, you can get all your product from Michael's and then paint along with Andy.
Exactly. This week, we're starting on Tuesday, we're starting a month-long series on color theory, and lots of great information will be there. And then Thursday, we're painting a holiday wreath. So there's more.
Everybody's going crazy about that, Andy, behind you.
Okay, we'll be doing that on Thursday of this week in the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group. So you're all welcome to tune in for that. And once again, I'll be painting fast because that's all we get to do.
Andy,
Yes,
can
Kira?
you hold the painting up again?
Yes.
No, yeah, that one, but also the one you're doing. There you go. That's beautiful. Can you also hold up the one that you're like in process doing?
Sure.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so I've got 2 more little leaves to go. And one thing that's nice about this poinsettia and the way we're painting it is that it's not a detailed painting. We're just giving people the suggestion of what they are looking at. And most people, when they see what they would consider a red flower like this, they'll go like, oh yeah, that's a poinsettia. And so you don't have to work any harder to get that information across. It's the truth. When somebody can look at what you've painted and they know what you've done, your job is finished. As a mentor of mine has said, you paint the dog, you don't paint the fleas. And so that's what we're doing. We're painting the dog. We're not painting the fleas on this. All right, so again, Payne's Gray and Alizarin Crimson give us this really, really great dark shading color. Now, I could have made a shading color using the Alizarin Crimson and Viridian because the red and green will also give you a really great shading color. It's just looks a little bit different, but it works the same way. All right, so I've got my dark shading on there. I'm gonna wipe my brush off a little bit, and I'm just going to blend and soften this color together. And the FolkArt artist pigments have an extended drying time, so I've got plenty of time to do this little bit of blending that I need to do. And then I'll wipe my brush and I'll go into my Napthol Crimson and we'll paint our last red leaf. So I'm looking at the clock and we may run over just a little bit tonight, but it's not going to be too bad. We were told that it is snowing here in Atlanta.
I know, is it snowy?
That's what they said.
That's my husband. I can't see.
Oh, I don't know if it's much or anything. You know, Atlanta, if a flake falls, then we're having a snowstorm.
Right. Dan said it's not right now. When I was driving home about an hour or so ago, it was trying to.
Okay. Well, I'm not.
I think we'll survive.
I think we will. I'm more concerned about my dog who will want to play in the snow. Poor thing, she hasn't had snow in years. And, you know, that's her job, is rescuing folks in the snow. So we look for snow every year and she's disappointed every year. All right, so just once again, just filling in the poinsettia leaf with our naphthol crimson. And naphthol crimson is your stop sign red color. I like to give you something to equate these artist color names to. So naphthol crimson is stop sign red. Alizarin crimson is like a nice Cabernet color.
Oh, they want to see Clarice, Andy. You'll have to, you guys go to the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group because Clarice is on there somewhere. I know there's pictures of her.
I don't know that there are. I know on Andy's, Andy Jones's, my personal Facebook page, there are pictures of Clarice. And she is a delightful little Saint Bernard. And
little Saint Bernard.
She is a house cow. I mean, she is the size of a cow. I mean, you've seen her, Kira. You know she's a big girl.
A house cow.
There's no denying that. But she is very, very sweet. And our Crafty the Elf is not in the studio tonight, but we had a gal who is part of our Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group who made our Crafty, who was our elf on a shelf here at Plaid. This gal made Crafty a Clarice sweater this year. So Crafty has a sweater with an embroidered Clarice head on her, and it's really very cute. And Crafty and I just love that. All right, so just adding some dark color here at the bottom of the leaf and blending that in. And there we have our poinsettia basically filled in with naphthol crimson and our dark color. And so what I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to dry this a little bit with my heat gun. And while I'm doing this, you all can continue to paint. And then I'll have you stop in just a few minutes and we'll move on to the next step.
Everybody wants to see Clarice. Gosh, we used to have, I don't know if everybody, can you hear me, Andy? People can hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, I know, because I can like kind of hear the dryer, the heat tool, why could I not, the heat gun. We used to have pet day at the office.
Yes.
So everybody got to bring their dogs, and I guess it was really just dogs. We had a ferret, I think, one year.
Yes, we did have a ferret. I don't think anybody ever brought a cat.
But just lots of dogs.
Lots of dogs.
Yeah. I think Duke has made an appearance on here before when I'm home.
Well, I remember one year I brought Thomas and Clarice. I had 2 St. Bernards at that time. And that was probably not my finest hour to bring them. They were a handful. And I remember we were in some meeting and I had, you know, these 2 giant St. Bernards and they were under the table. And when the room got quiet, all you could do is just hear them huge breathing. All right, so I have dried this enough. And what I want to do is I want to just take a little bit of red light and, well, we're going to use our palette knife. So Andy's going to talk to you about how to properly load your palette knife. So I'm going to move some paint away from my main puddle and I'm going to wipe my palette knife off. And here is how I load my palette knife. So I pick up paint on my palette knife. It doesn't come all the way to the bottom and it doesn't go all the way to the tip. It's only on the back side of my palette knife and there's nothing on the front side of my palette knife at all. Okay, so back of the palette knife, not all the way at the end, not all the way to the base, just a little roll of paint. And I will say to you, if you are not used to using a palette knife, then you have to practice with your palette knife. It's just like any other tool. It's not, I know some people hate the palette knife, some people love it, but I'm going to use this board just to show you what I can do with my palette knife properly loaded. So I could come right next to my center vein of my poinsettia leaf, and I can lay on some red, and then I can take that palette knife and I can just push the red to one side. I didn't have to do that all in one stroke. I can move that around. I can load my palette knife again, and I can apply that color if I want to right at the edge of my leaf. Being very careful about where that color is coming off of my palette knife. And then I can smooth that color around so that I don't have just one mark on the leaf. If I want to, I could pick it up a little closer to the tip. Again, very little paint on the brush. I mean, it's not a brush, it's a palette knife. But I can very carefully apply that right around the edge of a poinsettia leaf and soften that back in. So don't think that you have to put down a mark of paint with your palette knife and that's it. You can smooth that color out. And what I want to show you is just how I went, oh, there we go. Hang on. How I went right around the edge of that leaf, kept that outside edge very clean, and just pushed that color back into the poinsettia leaf. All right, so here we're going to go on to our big painting, or not our big painting, our painting. Remember, not too much paint on the brush. This is red light. And I'm just going to begin to put a little highlight where the poinsettia leaf is the brightest. And I'm just going to push that color around and soften it out into the leaf. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Highlight color and broken color, not a solid blob of paint. Wipe your palette knife off every time, and we can pick up a little bit more paint. And I can apply it again where I want my poinsettia leaf to be the brightest, and then push that color out, giving texture and color to that red leaf.
Beautiful.
Okay, all right, let me show you another thing that we can do. I'm going to put a minuscule amount of titanium white on the palette, and I am going to mix up a color from some red light, and I wipe my palette knife off because I'm going to come pick up some yellow light, and I'm going to mix some yellow light into my red light, because what I want to do is to lighten my red light, but I don't necessarily want to make a really pink color. So I'm just lightening it with some yellow light, and that'll give me a bit more of an orangey color. And I'm going to add just a little smidgen of white to that, but not too much. All right, so mix, mix, mix. Push the paint back into a puddle. That will also help keep your paint from drying out. And then with this new color, I'm going to load my palette knife up. Again, not all the way to the tip, not all the way to the base. Little roll of paint just on the back of the palette knife. There's no paint on the top of the palette knife. And I'm going to show you how this looks when I apply it to my poinsettia. It almost looks like a fluorescent color on there. So you get a very different look than just the red, because this has the yellow light and a little tiny bit of white in it. So you get a different look there. And I'm going to just continue to apply this on the light side of the center vein line. Small amount of paint. Don't have big globs or big amounts of paint on your palette knife. Big amounts of paint are not going to get you what you're looking for. You can always add more. It's harder to take away. You could see I'm really just kind of spreading out this small amount of paint that I've put on there.
It's like magic, Andy.
Well, it's thank you, Kira. I think that was.
It is. I love watching you paint. I'm just like, oh, like my head keeps tilting when you move your.
It's a lot of practice, and it's learning the right amount of paint to have on your palette knife. If I had a big glob of paint on there, I couldn't really push this around and soften it out. So less is more, and I can come back and I can add this color. If I wanted to add some here on this petal, I can come right in there and just very easily just add that on there. But you've got to have practiced picking up a very small amount of paint on your palette knife so that you know exactly where you're going to put that color on your painting. Most of the paintings that we do, or that I do, are not, they don't happen by accident. Everything is well planned out as to what's going to go on. So sometimes it's a matter of practice and knowing how much paint I have on my palette knife, where that color is coming off. And I make some timid marks to begin with so that I can see where things are going. And I'm going to take some of this lighter color and I'm going to put it right over some of that light red that I put on there, just giving me a little more variation in the color that's happening on there. So let's look at our other poinsettia. And I wish that these cameras picked up all of the subtle colors. Right here, you can see how some of that color has trailed off, and you get these little effects of the paint just dragging on to the flower petal. Here's another, I'm really happy with the way this looks, so I'm gonna point it out to you. But the paint just clinging to the top of the weave of the canvas is what you're looking for. You really want that very painterly effect, and you get that by small amounts of paint just skimmed on to the surface. So I'm going to take a little bit more of my red light, loading it up on the back of the palette knife, small amount of paint, and I'm just going to come in here on this leaf that's really in the back of my flower, rub a little bit of that color on there, give a little bit of life out here to that side of it. Just kind of lightening up a little bit here and there. And again, I'm using such small amounts of paint. I think most of you, if you could actually be right in this room with me as I'm doing this, the comment would be, he's not really using any paint at all. Did you see he didn't really have much paint on his palette knife at all when he's doing that? That, I think, would be the surprise takeaway as to what I'm doing, because I'm rubbing this all over the place and I'm not getting much paint off. So if you were having paint going everywhere, you have too much paint on your brush. All right, so that's how we highlight our poinsettia leaves. And so we're going to paint the center of the flower now. So I'm going to pick up, this is a number 8 flat brush, and I'm going to put another 2 colors out on my palette. I'm going to put out some yellow ochre. If you don't have yellow ochre, you can use any dark straw color. And what I'm going to do with the yellow ochre is I'm going to pick it up on my brush, and I'm just going to use the corner of my flat brush, and I'm going to paint the flower petals now, or the flowers now. So I'm going to put a little cluster of yellow ochre here. I'm going to put another little cluster of yellow ochre here. Some yellow ochre here. They're almost little dabs, kind of in a C formation. Just little dabs. And then I'm going to, I've used up all of my yellow light, so I'm going to put a little bit of yellow light out on my palette. Get a little bit of that down to the end of the jar.
Andy, do you have any tips if you're left-handed and you're using the palette knife? I've never had that one. That's a good one.
Yes, it is, and it works the same way. You just are holding your palette knife in your other hand, but it's the same technique of watching where you're going, putting it on, and spreading it around. Now, the reason I know it's the same, you're just using your other hand, is because I have a mother who is a lefty, and she is also a painter. And she taught painting for years and years and years, and most of the students in her class never realized she was left-handed, because she would be standing up in front of the room teaching, and they never really paid attention to what hand her brush was in. But it's just using it the same way. It's the amount of paint that you have on your palette knife that is going to be the key to your success. And also keeping it away from the tip and the bottom of your palette knife. That way you get a much more painterly effect when you're skimming that color on. All right, so now I've got my light yellow, and I'm just going to dab a little light yellow here on the center inside the little cluster of yellow ochre. I will hold this up to the camera in just a minute so you can see it better. This is again one of those times where the flowers of the poinsettia are not really interesting or worth spending a lot of time painting. It's those big red leaves that people are all about. Okay, so let me hold that up, and you can see there's not really much there, but just some dabs of color. And there's not really much to this whole painting except for some dabs of color. And so don't get hung up on exactly how this all plays out. Okay, let me talk real talk to you all. This is where, as an old friend of mine used to say, this is where I'm going to tell you how the cow eats cabbage. You need to find around the house or go to the craft store or order or however you get supplies in and get some canvas panels. They're not terribly expensive. And I would devote a canvas panel to practicing with your palette knife. So I want you to practice loading the palette knife as I've instructed with a small roll of paint, not quite to the tip, not quite to the base, only on one side of the palette knife, and practice. Can you make a mark? Can you take that palette knife and can you scrub it on the surface so that you spread that paint out so that it's not just one blob? Can you do that? If you can do that consistently, then maybe it's time to move on and see what you can do applying the color in a straight line and just dragging that color out. But the important thing is to practice on the same kind of surface that you paint on. Sometimes people will say, oh, I just painted on in my art journal. So, okay, there you are painting on a slick piece of paper, and some journals will buckle when they get wet from a base coat of paint. So that's not the same as painting on your canvas. Also, your canvas has a weave to it. So invest in a decent quality artist canvas to work on. Don't work on something that's bottom of the barrel, because you might do a really beautiful painting and you want it on something that's of good quality. So practice on the same sort of canvas that you're going to be painting on, and practice using your palette knife just the same way you would practice making brush strokes. I know that if many of you are used to, just looking for a different brush here to demonstrate with. All right, the way I was able to bring that color along the outside edge of the petals and soften it in, I do that because I have practiced. And just like I have practiced with my flat brush over the years, so at any point, if I need to, I can stop and I can make a brush stroke, or I could practice on my surface. So I could do an S stroke. I could connect two S strokes together. Because I've got that practice in my muscle memory, it's not difficult for me to do. So I can start at the other end and pull toward me and make a beautiful S stroke and connect a second one. It's all in practicing. You've got to put in the time practicing with your paint brushes so that you can do brushstroke work. That's why it doesn't take me very long to fill in an area when I paint, because I know how to make my brush follow along an outline, because that's part of brush control. And the same with using your palette knife. It's not some crazy foreign object. It's just another tool to apply paint to a surface. And there is an artist that I greatly admire. His name is Richard Schmid, and he talks at length about using the palette knife. And he states, and it's very, very true, that there are marks that you can apply with your palette knife that you can't do with any other kind of tool. No brush is ever going to give me this effect. You just can't do it with a brush. So your palette knife is the way to do that, and to make it happen consistently is by practicing on a scrap canvas until you can do it, and until you can do it very easily and proficiently. I think I'm just preaching to the choir now, but I think so many people believe that you should be able to just pick up art materials and create a painting without having to put in the effort. Nobody expects their kids or themselves to buy a piece of sheet music and sit down at a piano and play it. They always think you need to take lessons and you need to practice and do all of that stuff to play a musical instrument. Well, it's the same way with your painting. You have to practice, you have to learn the basics of it, and then you can do whatever you want to once you can make your tools do exactly what you have in your head. So stepping down off of my soapbox. So once again, we have our background that was done with Viridian and Payne's gray, and then we added our Kermit green highlights and then scraped on a little bit of that at the end, dried that, put our design on, and then painted our poinsettia leaves with naphthol crimson, shaded with alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. Then we highlighted some with red light, and then with a nice kind of pinky mixture of red light plus yellow light and just a little tiny bit of white in there. Scraped those highlights on with a palette knife. So we didn't have to fuss with blending all of that highlighting in. We just let it cling to the weave of the canvas. And then we added our little center dabs with yellow ochre and yellow light. So that's how we painted our holiday poinsettia. So we'll show this off again.
Beautiful.
Well, and I know that from, let me talk about the shine on this, because this will throw you off, because I want you to see these two things side by side. This green background, this is the exact same color that's on here. The difference is the finished painting is varnished, and I like to use a spray varnish, and I like a really, really high gloss finish on my paintings. So you can grab a nice spray gloss varnish and apply that to the surface, and it will bring those colors back, and you'll be amazed at how spectacular it looks. So don't forget, when your painting is good and dry, then you need to varnish it, and then you'll have a painting that looks like this.
Yeah. I kind of like the matte though too. It almost looks like velvety.
It does
like
look
that.
velvety.
Yeah, I like that.
The color isn't as rich and vibrant as it will be. You can put a matte varnish on it if you want to, and the matte varnish will bring the color back, but it will keep the sheen very, very low. As I've mentioned in my other lessons, as I've gotten old, I like the gloss on my paintings. Don't have much that's, my house doesn't have shiny stuff in it, but I do like it on my paintings. So that, I think, is going to wrap this up for tonight. Let me go back over a couple of things as we're getting ready to leave. So when you've finished your painting, you can post it to the group. If you post it to the group, you can hashtag Michael's Crafts.
Make it with Michael's and hashtag Plaid Crafts.
Okay, hashtag Plaid Crafts and hashtag Make It With Michael's. If you post it to the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group, you can hashtag Let's Paint Challenge with no apostrophe in the let's, and that's all run together as one word. So I encourage you to sign up for more of these Michael's Community Classroom lessons. I'm reaching here, not gracefully. That
matches your shirt, Andy.
I know, I always coordinate with my paintings. Janet is asking if you're going to make the wreath behind that. If you tune in Thursday at noon Eastern time to the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group, we will be doing that. In the Facebook group, the supply list and template are in the files section of the group. If you don't know, just come to the group, ask your questions about the wreath, and we'll get them answered for you. But I'm holding up this painting, and this is the Christmas tree and buffalo plaid that Jessie will be teaching next Monday night here in the Michael's Community Classroom. So if you haven't taken a class with Jessie, you'll love her. She is a delight as an instructor and a wonderful artist. And I know many of you have painted lots of things with her because I see them posted online. So this is what Jessie will be teaching us next Monday at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central, right here in the Michael's Community Classroom.
Yep, and so that class, I think they have all the classes up through January, the first week in January, so, yes. Which is good. So you can pre-sign up.
Yes, sign up for all of them and paint all of them. Yes. They're wonderful classes, and it's just incredible content that Plaid is making available, and Michael's is giving us a wonderful platform to share this with. So go out and get some supplies and get painting.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Michaels. We will see you guys next Monday.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good week.